We didn't match in age, we didn't match in circumstances, but our hearts did. I thought that made us wrong, that it meant we should never begin. Yet the more I tried to turn away, the clearer it became that some connections exist to challenge every boundary I believed in. My name's Jack Harlan. I'm 23, a white guy from Willow Creek, Iowa, where the cornfields stretch out forever and the sun hangs low and lazy in the summer sky. It's one of those small towns where everyone knows your business before you do, but somehow you still feel invisible. I work as a maintenance guy at the local high school during the day, fixing leaky faucets, replacing burnt-out bulbs, mopping up the gym after sweaty basketball practices. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy. Evenings and weekends, I pick up odd jobs around the farms on the outskirts, repairing fences, patching up barns, anything that needs a strong back and a toolbox. I drive an old pickup truck that's seen better days, with rust spots creeping up the fenders and a radio that only picks up country stations half the time. I live alone in a weathered wooden house on the edge of town, the one my mom left me when she passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. It was sudden. One of those foggy mornings on the county road where a semi-truck didn't see her coming. The house still smells like old pine and faint traces of her lavender soap. There's her favorite armchair in the living room, faded from years of use, and a stack of her recipe books in the kitchen that I never open. Nights get quiet here, too quiet sometimes. I don't have much of a social life, and just a beer with the guys from the hardware store now and then, or tinkering with my truck in the driveway. I've thought about leaving Willow Creek, maybe heading to Des Moines for something bigger, but roots run deep in places like this. Or maybe I'm just scared of starting over. Then there's Sarah Donovan. She's 42, single, and only moved to town about 6 months ago. She rents a small house near the school, the kind with a wraparound porch and a backyard garden where she grows tomatoes and herbs. During the day, she works part-time as the school's office clerk, handling paperwork, answering phones, and dealing with the endless stream of parents and kids. I've seen her there, always dressed simply in jeans and a blouse, her hair tied back loosely, a few strands escaping like she doesn't care about perfection. She keeps to herself mostly, polite smiles in the hallways, but no deep conversations. No one knows much about why she came here. Rumors float around, maybe escaping a bad divorce or just tired of city life. Her eyes have this weary depth, like they've seen more than they let on, but she carries it with a quiet grace that makes you wonder. We didn't really cross paths until that one embarrassing afternoon. It was a Saturday, the kind where the heat shimmers off the asphalt and the cicadas buzz nonstop. I was at the school fixing a jammed door in the cafeteria when the fire alarm went off out of nowhere. The system was ancient, prone to glitches, but it still sent everyone into a panic. Kids poured out of classrooms, teachers yelling for order, the shrill bell piercing through the air like a scream. I dropped my tools and sprinted down the hall to check the electrical panel, figuring it was a short circuit or something simple. My boots echoed on the linoleum as I turned a sharp corner by the stairs, not looking where I was going. That's when I collided with her. Sarah was rushing the other way, arms full of a thick stack of folders, probably heading to the office to grab some files before evacuating. We slammed into each other hard, her shoulder hitting my chest, papers flying everywhere like confetti. She let out a sharp gasp, stumbling back a step, while I caught myself against the wall. "What the hell?" she snapped, her voice high-pitched from the shock, her cheeks flushing red. The alarm was still blaring, adding to the chaos, and kids were streaming past us, shouting and laughing nervously. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, bending down to help gather the scattered sheets. My face burned with embarrassment. Here I was, the maintenance guy, barreling through like an idiot. Papers were everywhere, schedules, student records, memos. As I grabbed a handful, one sheet caught my eye right at my feet. It was a form, bold letters at the top. Request for transfer. Underneath there were scribbled notes, crossed out lines like someone had started filling it out but changed their mind. I didn't mean to read it, but the words jumped out. Reasons like personal circumstances and relocation needed. Before I could process it, Sarah snatched it from my hand, her fingers brushing mine in a hurry. Her eyes widened for a split second, a flash of something vulnerable, almost panicked. "It's nothing," she said quickly, stuffing it back into the folder, her voice steadier now but with an edge. "I must have been in the way." She knelt down to pick up the rest, avoiding my gaze. The alarm kept ringing, but the hallway was emptying out, leaving us in this awkward bubble. I helped her collect the last few pages, my mind racing. Why a transfer request? She'd only been here 6 months. Was she unhappy? Running from something? I wanted to apologize again, maybe ask if she was okay, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just handed her the stack and muttered, "Really sorry about that. The alarm's probably a false one. I'll get it shut off." She nodded, clutching the folders to her chest like a shield. No harm done. But there was a pause, our eyes meeting for the first time really, hers dark and searching, mine probably wide with guilt. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken things, the air thick with the scent of old school polish and her faint floral perfume. Then a teacher yelled from down the hall, breaking the spell. She turned and walked away, her steps quick, while I stood there, heart pounding, feeling like I'd intruded on something private. The alarm finally silenced as I flipped the breaker, but the echo of that collision lingered. I didn't know it then, but that clumsy crash had cracked open a door neither of us expected. After that chaotic afternoon with the false alarm, I couldn't shake the image of Sarah's face when she snatched that transfer form from my hand. It wasn't anger exactly, more like a raw vulnerability she'd quickly masked. I told myself to forget it, it wasn't my business. But Willow Creek being what it is, a place where paths cross whether you want them to or not, I started noticing her everywhere. In the school hallways, she'd be hurrying with a stack of files, her steps purposeful but quiet. In the dusty storage room, sorting through old records under the fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. Even on the bleachers behind the football field after hours, sitting alone, watching the kids practice with a distant look in her eyes, like she was somewhere else entirely. We didn't talk at first, just nods in passing, mine awkward, hers polite but guarded. I'd catch myself glancing her way during my rounds, fixing a loose doorknob or unclogging a sink, wondering about that form. Was she planning to leave already? What had brought her here in the first place? The town gossips had their theories, a fresh start after a messy breakup, or maybe family troubles back wherever she came from. But I kept my mouth shut. I'd already intruded enough. Then came the storm. It rolled in one evening like a freight train, dark clouds swallowing the sky, thunder rumbling in the distance. Rain hammered down in sheets, turning the dirt roads to mud and whipping branches off trees. I was at home, nursing a cup of instant coffee and staring out the window, when my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Ellis, the old landlord who owned half the rentals in town, including Sarah's place. "Jack, hate to bother you, but that fence behind Ms. Donovan's house just gave way in the wind. Can you swing by and patch it up before it gets worse? I'll pay you double for the trouble." I grumbled but grabbed my rain jacket and tools, loading them into the truck. Driving through the downpour was a nightmare, wipers slapping furiously, headlights cutting through the gray haze. By the time I pulled up to her house, I was soaked just from the dash to her porch. She answered the door quickly, surprise flickering across her face. "Jack, what are you doing here?" "Mr. Ellis called. Fence out backs down." I wiped rain from my eyes, feeling like a drowned rat. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in for a minute, it's pouring out there." I waited in her kitchen while she fetched a towel. The place was cozy, wooden cabinets, a small table with a vase of fresh wildflowers, the faint smell of herbs from her garden mixing with the rain-scented air. She handed me the towel and a mug of hot coffee. "Black, right?" I remember from the school break room. "Yeah, thanks." I took a sip, warming my hands on the mug. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. "I'll get to it as soon as the rain lets up a bit." We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, the storm filling the gaps. Then she asked, "How long have you been working at the school?" "Nearly 2 years now." I leaned against the counter, glancing out at the backyard where the fence lay splintered. "Before that, I was in community college, but I dropped out halfway." "Why?" Her question was soft, not prying, but genuine. I stared into my coffee, the steam rising like ghosts. Life got in the way. Things you don't plan for. I didn't elaborate, didn't mention the endless hospital visits with Mom, the bills piling up, the way everything just stopped. She nodded, like she understood without needing details. The rain eased after about 20 minutes, turning to a steady drizzle. I headed out back, tools in hand, nailing boards and wiring the fence back together under the dim porch light. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it'd hold until morning. Sarah watched from the doorway, arms crossed against the chill. When I finished, she brought out another coffee. You didn't have to rush in this weather. It's my job. I wiped my hands on my jeans, the mud caking my boots. We sat on the porch steps, sheltered from the rain, the air cool and fresh. That's when she opened up a little. I used to teach, you know. Really? I raised an eyebrow, surprised. She seemed like someone who'd command a classroom effortlessly. Yeah, high school English in Chicago. She sipped her coffee, staring at the wet grass. Loved it, actually. But I made some bad choices, trusted the wrong person. Her voice trailed off and I didn't push. Instead, I shared a bit more. People at the school don't always see me as more than the janitor guy. Kids laugh sometimes, call me the fix-it kid. She looked at me then, really looked. They're wrong. It takes strength to keep things running. That night we talked until the rain stopped completely. Nothing deep, just safe stories, like how I fixed my first fence as a kid or her favorite books from teaching. But there was a comfort in it, a shared quiet that felt rare in this town. When I left, she thanked me again, her hand lingering on the doorframe. Drive safe, Jack. After that, those chance meetings turned into something more regular. I'd see her in the school parking lot and we'd chat briefly about the weather or a broken vending machine. One afternoon, I helped her carry boxes of old files to her car, our arms brushing accidentally. Evenings, if I was out fixing something nearby, she'd wave from her garden. But it was the storm that started the habit, the porch talks. A few days later, another windstorm hit, and Mr. Ellis called again for minor repairs. Sarah invited me in for coffee afterward, and we ended up sitting under the awning, listening to the rain patter on the roof. We shared fragments of our lives, careful not to dig too deep. I told her about the time I rebuilt my truck's engine from scratch, skipping the part where it was to save money during Mom's treatments. She talked about planting her garden as therapy, avoiding why she needed it. Laughter came easier, her dry wit catching me off guard, making me chuckle in ways I hadn't in years. Silences weren't uncomfortable, they were filled with the rustle of leaves or distant thunder. I started looking forward to those moments, feeling seen in a way the town never made me feel. But we both held back the raw parts. I didn't mention the nights I sat alone in Mom's armchair, staring at old photos. She never spoke of the tears she'd shed over whatever wrong person had broken her trust. Still, in those incomplete stories, a bond grew. I found myself thinking about her during quiet drives home, wondering what else lay behind her weary eyes. And slowly, without realizing it, I began to care. Really care about this woman who was still, in so many ways, a stranger to me. The whispers started small, like the rustle of cornstalks in a light breeze. But in a town like Willow Creek, they grew fast. At first it was just glances, teachers in the break room pausing their conversations when I walked by, or parents at the school pickup line eyeing me a second too long. Then the words trickled in. I overheard Mrs. Hargrove, the history teacher, murmuring to the librarian one afternoon while I was fixing a flickering light in the lounge. She's got to be nearly twice his age. What does she see in a kid like that? I froze, screwdriver in hand, pretending not to hear. But it stung, sharp and unexpected, like stepping on a hidden thorn. Sarah heard them too. She mentioned it casually one evening on her porch after I'd stopped by to drop off a spare bulb for her garden light. We were sitting on the steps, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. People are talking, she said, her voice even but with a weariness I recognized. About us. I shifted uncomfortably, staring at my boots. Yeah, I caught some of it. Doesn't bother you? She shrugged, plucking at a loose thread on her sleeve. It does, but I've dealt with worse. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask, but the rumors kept coming. A farmer at the hardware store chuckling, "That young Harlan boy's punching above his weight, ain't he? Probably just needs a mother figure." Or a parent at a school meeting smirking, "She's using him for a distraction. Poor kid doesn't know better." Each one chipped away at me, feeding that nagging voice in my head. What are you doing? She's got a life you can't touch. You're just the maintenance guy. It all built up until that one evening when everything cracked. I'd finished my shift early and was driving home, the truck rumbling along the back roads, dust kicking up behind me. As I passed Sarah's street, I glanced over, habit by now, and saw her stepping out of a sleek black sedan parked in her driveway. A man in his 50s, dressed sharp in a button-down and slacks, got out with her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, leaning in to say something, his touch familiar, almost intimate. She nodded, smiling faintly, and he hugged her briefly before getting back in the car and driving off. My stomach twisted. I slowed the truck but didn't stop, turning away and heading home instead. Who was he? An old friend? More? The image burned in my mind all night, mixing with the rumors, stirring up doubts I'd tried to bury. The next day at school, I avoided her, kept my head down in the halls, focused on scrubbing graffiti off a locker. But she found me in the boiler room during lunch, the hum of the furnace drowning out the distant chatter of kids. "Jack," she said, stepping in, her voice cutting through the noise. "About last night." I didn't look up, wiping my hands on a rag. "What about it?" "The man you saw, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" My tone came out colder than I meant, laced with hurt I couldn't hide. She hesitated, crossing her arms. "He's from my past, just helping with some old matters. Past I don't need to know about, right?" I finally met her eyes, the words spilling out bitter. "Like whatever was on that transfer form? Or why you're really here in this nowhere town?" Her face paled, but she held her ground. "Jack, don't do this." "Why not?" I pressed, my voice rising despite myself. "Am I just some kid helping you forget whatever failure brought you here? A distraction until you find someone your age, someone who fits?" The slap came quick, not hard, just a sharp sting across my cheek that shocked us both. Her hand trembled as she pulled it back, eyes wide with regret and tears. "You have no right to say that," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You don't know what I've been through." I rubbed my face, the heat rising not just from the slap but from shame. Maybe I don't, and maybe that's the point. I grabbed my tools and stormed out, leaving her standing there alone in the dim room. The door slammed behind me, echoing down the empty hall. That night, I sat in Mom's old armchair, staring at the wall, the house feeling emptier than ever. The rumors replayed in my head, twisting into truths. "She's too old for you. You're just a rebound." I felt small, exposed, like the town had been right all along. Why would someone like her, with her quiet strength and hidden depths, choose me? I was just the guy with calloused hands and a half-lived life. The self-doubt gnawed at me, turning every shared coffee and laugh into something fragile, something I wasn't sure was real. And in the silence, I wondered if I'd ruined the only connection that had made me feel less alone. The accident happened on a bitter, cold night, the kind where the wind cuts through your jacket like knives and the stars hang sharp in the sky. I'd been avoiding Sarah for days after our blow-up in the boiler room, dodging hallways, skipping the back roads near her house, burying myself in work to numb the ache. The slap still echoed in my mind, not the pain of it, but the regret in her eyes. I felt like a fool, lashing out from my own insecurities, but pride kept me silent. That evening, I took a late job at the Thompson farm on the outskirts, repairing a sagging barn roof under floodlights. The ladder was slick with frost, my hands numb despite the gloves. I was halfway up, hammer in hand, when a gust whipped through, shaking the rungs. My boots slipped, and everything blurred, the world tilting a sharp crack as I hit the ground, pain exploding in my side. Then nothing. Blackness swallowed me whole. I woke to beeps and sterile white lights, the smell of antiseptic stinging my nose. My head throbbed, ribs screaming with every breath. A hospital room, the small county one in town with its faded curtains and humming machines. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness pinned me down. "Easy there," a voice said. It was Dr. Reynolds, the old town doc who'd patched up half of Willow Creek at some point. He adjusted my IV, checking a clipboard. "You took a nasty fall, Jack. Cracked ribs, concussion, some bruises. Lucky it wasn't worse." "What happened?" My voice came out raspy, throat dry as sandpaper. "Farmer Thompson found you out cold. Called the ambulance. You've been out for a few hours." He paused, glancing at the door. "You've got a visitor. She's been here since they brought you in." Before I could ask, the door creaked open, and there she was, Sarah. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying, hair disheveled from rushing over. She clutched a coat in her arms, knuckles white. "Jack," she whispered, stepping closer, her voice breaking on my name. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in the harsh hospital light. Dr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "I'll give you two a minute." He slipped out, leaving us alone with the steady beep of the monitor. She pulled a chair to the bedside, sitting down heavily. "I came as soon as I heard." Mr. Ellis called, said the ambulance passed his place. Her hand hovered near mine, then pulled back uncertain. God, you scared me. I swallowed, the pain in my ribs sharpening. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. Tears welled up, one slipping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. After what I said, what I did, I couldn't just. The doctor had mentioned something before she came in, words that hung in the air now. He'd been checking my chart, muttering about my history. Kid like you, dropping out to care for his mom in her last months? That takes guts. It hit me then that he'd probably said it louder than intended, or maybe Sarah had overheard outside the door. Her expression confirmed it, pity mixed with shock. You heard? I said flatly, staring at the ceiling tiles. She nodded slowly. The doctor, he mentioned it while I was waiting, about your mom, the cancer. How you quit school to take care of her. Her voice trembled. Jack, I had no idea. I didn't know. I closed my eyes, the memories flooding back unbidden. The endless chemo sessions, Mom's frail frame in that hospital bed, the way she'd smile through the pain to make me feel better. Yeah, stage 4, it came fast. I couldn't just leave her alone. My throat tightened. Dropped everything. School, friends, whatever plans I had. Just her. Sarah reached out then, her fingers gently covering mine. I'm so sorry for everything. For slapping you, for not seeing. God, I feel awful. I turned my head, meeting her gaze. The vulnerability in her eyes mirrored my own. I didn't know about you either. The words hung there, an invitation or maybe a challenge. She took a deep breath, her grip tightening. That man you saw, he's my lawyer. Helped me get out of a bad marriage years ago. Her voice dropped to a whisper, like confessing a secret she'd buried deep. It was abusive, not just words, physical too. I stayed too long, thinking I could fix it, but I couldn't. He isolated me, made me doubt everything. When I finally left, it was a mess, court, restraining orders, starting over. That's why I'm here in this town. To hide, really. To breathe. The room spun a little, not from the concussion, but from the weight of her words. I'd accused her of using me, of seeing me as a kid, when all along she'd been carrying this. We hid so much from each other, I murmured, tears stinging my eyes. I turned my face away, not wanting her to see. But the feelings, they're not fake, she said softly, her thumb brushing my knuckles. Not for me. I looked back, my vision blurring. You scared of what people say, the age thing, the rumors? She leaned closer, her eyes steady despite the tears. I'm more scared of losing you. In that moment, with the machines beeping and the world outside forgotten, something shifted. The walls we'd built, the secrets, the doubts, crumbled just enough to let the truth through. I squeezed her hand, the pain in my ribs fading against the ache in my chest. Me too. After the hospital, things didn't magically fix themselves. I spent a week recovering at home, ribs taped up, head foggy from the concussion meds. Sarah visited every day, bringing soup from her garden herbs, sitting by my bed with books she'd read aloud in that soft, steady voice. We talked more than ever, filling in the gaps we'd left wide open. I told her about the nights after Mom died, how the house felt like a tomb, how I'd buried myself in work to escape the grief. She shared the bruises from her marriage, the fear that had followed her like a shadow, the way she'd rebuilt herself piece by piece, only to end up in Willow Creek hiding from it all. No more secrets. It hurt to hear, but it healed too, like lancing a wound. The town didn't let up, though. Rumors swirled thicker than before. Whispers in the diner about that Donovan woman and the young Harlan boy. Sidelong glances at the grocery store. Mr. Ellis even pulled me aside one day while I was back on light duty, fixing a gate at his property. Son, you sure about this? She's got years on you, life experience you can't match. I nodded politely, but inside it boiled. Sarah faced it head-on at school, a parent complaining about distractions, teachers gossiping in the lounge. She came home one evening, eyes tired, and collapsed on her porch swing. They think I'm robbing the cradle, she said with a bitter laugh. I sat beside her, our shoulders touching. Let them think. We know the truth. But it wasn't easy. There were arguments, small ones at first, born from the pressure. I'd snap about feeling like the kid in the relationship. She'd withdraw, fearing she'd drag me down with her baggage. One night, under the stars in her backyard, it boiled over. Maybe they're right, I said, pacing. What if I'm just a phase for you? Someone to fill the quiet until you transfer out. She stood up, facing me. And what if you're the one who wakes up and realizes I'm too old, too broken? Her voice cracked. Jack, we're not perfect. This isn't a fairy tale. I stopped, the weight of it hitting me. No, it's not, but it's ours. We learned to navigate it together. I went back to work gradually, easing into my routines, but with a new purpose. Sarah encouraged me to finish what I'd started. I enrolled in night classes for electrical certification at the community college in the next town over. You've got talent, she said one evening, helping me study wiring diagrams at her kitchen table. Don't waste it fixing everyone else's messes forever. It felt good having someone believe in me like that. In return, she started tutoring kids after school, local ones struggling with reading, using her old teaching skills. It reminds me why I loved it, she told me, her eyes lighting up as she graded papers. We built these little victories side by side, turning the town's judgment into background noise. Not everything changed overnight. We still got stares walking down Main Street, hands brushing but not quite holding in public. Friends drifted. A couple of guys from the hardware store stopped inviting me for beers, their wives whispering about that woman. Sarah lost a tutoring gig when a parent pulled their kid, citing concerns. But we found strength in the quiet moments, drives through the cornfields at dusk, the golden stalks swaying like waves, wind whipping through the open windows. One afternoon we parked by an old silo, the sun setting fire to the horizon. I took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine. You ever think about leaving, that transfer form? She squeezed back. I did, but not anymore. Her eyes met mine, steady and sure. This place? It's not perfect. We're not. The age thing, the past? It doesn't fit some storybook. But my heart chose you, Jack. Through the mess, the doubts. That's what matters. I leaned in, kissing her softly, the world fading to just us. Mine too. We don't have a grand ending, no wedding bells echoing across the fields, no fairy tale escape. The rumors linger, the glances persist. But we've carved out our space. Evenings on her porch, sharing incomplete stories that grow fuller each time. Mornings where I wake to her coffee brewing, the house feeling less empty. In the vast Iowa expanse amid the whispering corn and endless skies, we walk hand in hand. Not because we match in age or circumstance, but because, after all the hidden pains and stumbled words, our hearts simply chose each other. And in a town full of judgments, that's enough.